حاملا معي المودة والصداقة.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast here on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamima. These are today's headlines. Saad Risha is freed by his captors following a 3-day abduction ordeal that prompted his relatives to block East Lebanon roads. 2 suicide bombers blow themselves up in a confrontation with security forces in Saudi Arabia's second city of Jeddah. And Syria's government and rebel fighters are to sit down at the negotiating table for the first time in nearly 6 years of war in the Kazakh capital of Astana. 74-year-old Saad Risha was freed by his captors following a 3-day abduction ordeal that prompted his relatives to block East Lebanon roads and authorities to gear up for a new security plan in the Bekaa Valley. Risha was taken by the Lebanese Army intelligence to the military barracks in the Bekaa Valley town of Abla before returning to his family. Risha was reportedly kidnapped by 3 men who were seen on surveillance videos circulated online after he closed his convenience store for the day. The man has now arrived safely at his home in Kobylyes and thanked officials who exerted efforts to release him. Prime Minister Saad Hariri contacted Risha's family, expressing his personal interest in unveiling the circumstances of the abduction. He vowed to follow up on the investigation until the arrest of the kidnappers and the referral to the judiciary. U.S. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard says Lebanon and the United States are working towards mutual goals in combating terror threats. Gabbard spoke after meeting with Prime Minister Saad Hariri. Let's hear her.
It's my first visit to Lebanon, and it has been a great opportunity for me to be able to meet with both the President and the Prime Minister, to meet with religious leaders here, as well as leaders focused on the security of Lebanon and our shared interest and goal of defeating this terrorist threat that is posed not only to the people here, but really to people around the world. There continues to be a great partnership between the U.S. military and the Lebanese army as you work towards that common goal in ensuring the security and stability of Lebanon. I serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee as well as the Armed Services Committee in the United States Congress. And my goal here in visiting Lebanon and Syria is one of fact-finding, of listening, and of working with partners towards ending the conflict, ending the war in Syria, working towards peace, and defeating terrorist groups like ISIS, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, and others who are causing such devastation and who pose a threat, again, not only to those in the region, but to the world. This is a shared cause and common interest that all countries' leaders must rally around and work together to defeat.
Syria's government and rebel fighters were to sit down at the negotiating table for the first time in nearly 6 years of war, the latest diplomatic push to end hostilities. Hosted in the Kazakh capital Astana, the talks will see an opposition delegation composed exclusively of rebel groups negotiating with the government of Bashar al-Assad in an initiative sponsored by rebel backer Turkey and government allies Russia and Iran. Though the talks have been welcomed by all parties in the conflict, delegates from both sides are heading to Kazakhstan with apparently opposing ideas about the goals, with Assad insisting that rebels lay down their arms in exchange for an amnesty deal. The rebels, meanwhile, say they will focus solely on reinforcing a frail nationwide truce brokered by Moscow and Ankara last month. Coming up next, highlights of Trump's inauguration as 45th President of the United States. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching the English newscast here on Future Television. 2 suicide bombers have blown themselves up in a confrontation with security forces in Saudi Arabia's second city of Jeddah. Local media reported that security officers surrounded a house and exchanged fire with 2 men who then detonated explosives that images showed completely destroyed the home. There was no immediate comment from the Saudi Interior Ministry. Moving on to Europe, a bus carrying Hungarian teenagers crashed and caught fire on a motorway in northern Italy, killing 16 people. The bus was reportedly returning to Budapest from France, where the students had been on a mountain holiday. Some 36 injured people were taken to a hospital following the accident near Verona last night. At least 22 people were killed and 90 were wounded as a bomb blast ripped through a vegetable market in Pakistan's northwest region, where a large number of people had gathered to buy fresh produce. Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, a banned armed group that has attacked minority Shia Muslims in the past, claimed responsibility for the attack. Gambia's President Yahya Jammeh, who for weeks had refused to step down after losing the recent election, confirmed he has decided to relinquish power. The announcement came after hours of last-ditch talks with regional leaders and the threat by a regional military force to make him leave. The new president, Adama Barrow, had earlier declared that the rule of fear was over and that Jammeh, who ruled the country for 22 years, had agreed to leave. Barrow was sworn in at Gambia's embassy in Dakar in neighboring Senegal on Thursday. South Korea's culture minister has resigned after being arrested for allegedly creating a blacklist of nearly 10,000 artists who voiced criticism of impeached President Park Geun-hye. Cho Yoon-sun, the first minister in active service arrested in South Korea, is accused of creating the vast catalog to starve the artists of government subsidies and private investment and place them under state surveillance. Donald Trump has been officially sworn in as the 45th President of the United States, ushering in a new political era. The inauguration took place outside U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. on Friday. Trump promised to put America first and make America great again and pledged to unite the world against radical Islam. For those of you who've missed it, here are Inauguration Day's highlights.
President-elect, how are you? Good to see you. Congratulations. Hello. Hello, everybody.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States,
the office of President of the United States. Whether we are black or brown or white, we all bleed the same red blood of patriots. We will no longer accept politicians who are all talk and no action, constantly complaining but never doing anything about it.
This is what America looks like! Racism out! Equality in! I believe that we will win!
This has been the privilege of my life, and I know I speak for Michelle as well. And I can't wait to see what you do next. And I promise you I'll be right there with you. All right? God bless you.
Okay? All right. That's it.
Thank you. I was very honored, very honored, when I heard that President Bill Clinton and Secretary Hillary Clinton was coming today. And I think it's appropriate to say, and I'd like you to stand up. I'd like you to stand up. And honestly, there's nothing more I can say because I have a lot of respect for those two people.
it
As you might have seen in the previous video, hundreds of protesters marched through downtown streets during President Donald Trump's inauguration. Some groups clashed with police, throwing rocks and bottles, which police responded to with tear gas and concussion grenades. More details in this report.
As Donald Trump takes office, chaos on the streets of the U.S. Capitol, with protesters smashing windows, blocking traffic, and clashing with police. About 500 people, many wearing black masks and hoodies, marching through downtown, using hammers to claw up chunks of pavement to attack a Bank of America branch and a Starbucks. Others throwing bottles and rocks at police, who detained dozens on charges of rioting. Law enforcement chasing down masked demonstrators through the alleys in downtown D.C., where protesters shed their masks and black clothes after vandalizing property. Protesters also smashed the windows of a limousine and later set it on fire. A few blocks away, protesters also trying to block Trump supporters at checkpoints as they filtered onto the National Mall for Trump's swearing-in ceremony. Thousands of others protesting non-violently, accusing Trump of targeting Muslims, Hispanics, and other minorities, saying he'll bring fascism to the United States. As many as 300,000 expected in Washington on Saturday for a women's march to protest Trump, who weathered charges of sexual harassment during last year's presidential campaign. Trump himself appearing to draw a relatively thin crowd for his swearing-in ceremony on a gray, rainy day, significantly smaller than the estimated 2 million who turned out for President Obama's first inauguration in 2009.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a recap of our top stories. Saad Risha is freed by his captors following a 3-day abduction ordeal that prompted his relatives to block East Lebanon roads. 2 suicide bombers blow themselves up in a confrontation with security forces in Saudi Arabia's second city of Jeddah. And Syria's government and rebel fighters are to sit down at the negotiating table for the first time in nearly 6 years of war in the Kazakh capital of Astana. Those are your top stories for this Saturday. I'm Linda Tamim, and I thank you all for watching.
خلوا لماي المودة والصداقة